Hello and welcome to another episode of the Firearms Insider Gun and Gear Review Podcast. This is episode 91, the Archery Special. Yeah, that's right. We're going to be talking guns or bows and arrows today. On this show, we showcase gun reviews, gear, and anything else that gun enthusiasts may be looking for. We strive to evaluate products from an unbiased and honest perspective. I'm your host from the Firearms Radio Network, your source for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts, and archery enthusiasts. Today I have with me a new guest. He's a listener. Please welcome James Carr. How's it going, man?
I'm doing good. How's it going?
Doing great. Thank you for joining me on this one, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited.
So the usual co-hosts kind of all bowed out because they didn't really want to be on an archery episode because they just, don't have much experience other than, the Boy Scouts. So it's all good and fine. And I'm sure James here has even more experience with archery than I do. So it's good to have some more support there. Go ahead and tell the listeners about yourself, James.
Yeah, I'm a dentist here in Mississippi, as a matter of fact. So it's quite hot outside. I am almost strictly a bow hunter at this point in time in my life. I actually took a black bear last year in Manitoba, and I'm headed to Wyoming, thankfully, in August to try to make an attempt to get an antelope. I'm in the process right now of trying to take the Super 10 of North America all by bow, and so it's been really exciting to do that with my father and him be there to film stuff. And I'm into guns as well. As a matter of fact, normally I think you ask us what we've done for the week, right, as far as in guns. And so I actually went out and bought a KSG. It's my first ever defense shotgun of any kind or defense weapon. I do carry a 45 that I carry on me all the time, but I've been really excited about it. It's been a lot of fun. I put a lot of rounds through it so far and had no failures. It's been really exciting, to be honest. And so, but yeah, that's me. I enjoy kind of guns, archery. It really doesn't matter. If you can shoot something with it, it's a lot of fun.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. Have you, how many rounds have you put through that KSG?
We're probably right at 100, maybe 125. At this point, it's been all double-aught buckshot that I've been sticking through it. Did go ahead and break down, and I went and got the limb saver recoil pad to slide on it. It wasn't a big deal. It was just more after trying to stick that many rounds through it, you just get a little tired and that kind of stuff. I actually bought the gun 2 weekends ago, came home on Saturday evening and broke it down and Cerakoted it to desert sand. And so I was really excited. It turned out really, really well. And so it's been great, man. It really has. And like I said, I've had no jams, no issues regarding any of that kind of stuff, no failures to load. And it's pretty impressive in the sense of what it's able to do. So it's been a lot of fun.
Right on. Yeah, I guess the last thing I did in guns was I did some carrying over the weekend. We doing some camping down in a little bit of southwest Washington State, the wild woods of Washington State. Everyone seemed to wanted to bring a gun to carry on their hip, kind of more for a conversational piece. I don't think anybody had to even use theirs. There are bears in the area, so that was kind of just the thing as, everyone has at least a piece on them in case for whatever reason. But by the time we start, having the barbecue, having some beers, playing some beer pong, like there's not a critter in a 10-mile radius that's still, hanging around because we're so outrageous. So that's about all I did. Last thing I did in archery, I kind of got my dad's I sold my PSC and I got my dad's Hoyt Katera that I'm using, and I love that thing. It just kind of seems a lot more forgiving than my old Hoyt my old PSC Carrera was. So I was just kind of dusting it off and shooting my target, and it seemed that it had been taken over by some yellow jackets, so I had to kind of use some wasp spray to exterminate all the critters that were living inside that before I can go pull my arrows out. That's the last thing I did.
Yeah, you have to watch out for the wasp in archery targets. You make enough holes and you wind up in some trouble.
Yeah, exactly. You're making it like a perfect condominium for them, so right. You always got to watch out. So I think it was a kind of a handmade target that was just kind of a sack filled with lots of plastic bags, just because it was cheap to do and kind of reduce, reuse, recycle. Well, apparently the bees love all those crevices that go in between those bags. So,
Yep.
Anyway, let's get right into the announcements. Of course, the bandwidth sponsor for this podcast is Patriot Patch Co. That's our patch company that me and Jake have started up. So custom designed Morale PVC patches that have 3D vinyl, and they are custom designed by yours truly. So we're selling those over at patriotpatch.co is the website, and you can still pre-order the I'm Your Huckleberry patch, which is our first patch that we're doing a pre-order on. It's good old Doc Holliday with his famous line, I'm Your Huckleberry, when he encounters was it Johnny Ringo. So you can go ahead and pre-order that today, as well as get some awesome other stuff. We got some patriotic flag patches. We got some holsters on there too, spoon holsters you can wear around your neck and always be carrying a spoon on you at all times if the situation ever arises. So check that out at patriotpatch.co. One other announcement is I actually posed a question on the Firearms Insider Facebook page. I would have loved to have gotten a couple more people to leave comments on there. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up for you guys, since I didn't really talk about it last episode, is going over to the Firearms Insider Facebook page. Of course, give us a like. But I have the question posted on there, just, kind of an AMA, ask us anything or ask me anything. So we had one response. It was from Josh Spill, and he said, now that 300 Blackout isn't hipster anymore, what do you think the new trend caliber will be? Well, I still kind of see 300 Blackout as, not quite mainstream as, 223 or 556, but it is getting more popular, so it kind of is like, what's going to be the new kid on the block? And so I actually threw my hat into the ring and said that 308 necked up to a larger than 30 caliber that still fits in an AR-10 magazine is kind of going to start to be the new hipster fad, because everything that appealed to 300 Blackout and made it such a success, as far as use the same bolt face, fits in the magazine, all you got to do is swap out the barrel, can be applied to the 308 platform using an AR-10 or a similar semi-automatic platform that shoots 308 or 7.62 by 51. So that's kind of the new thing I see coming down the line. There's already a couple contenders. There's a 375 Reaper, so it's a 308 necked up to 375, which is just honking. There's the 338 Federal, which is actually 308 necked up to 338. I'm not sure. I got to check on the overall length that'll fit in a magazine still. But that's basically taking the recoil of 308 and then, getting a much bigger and more kinetic energy by increasing that bullet size and weight. So that's kind of what I see. Also, my second guess would be that since we all know what happens during an election year, and that's coming up in 2016, I would stock up on 22 if you haven't already, if you're able to. But if you're not, look into 17, man. 17 Winchester WSM. That's always on the shelf when people go nuts for 22. So I say get yourself a 17 caliber rimfire rifle and stock up on 17, and rest assured that there's probably going to be a lot of 17 on the shelf still, as we're looking into the elections of 2016 and a possibility of another Democrat in the office, and people freaking out. So if you have any more questions, go ahead and find that little thread on our Facebook page and go ahead and add it in there. All right, now let's get into the product spotlight. First one, for you gun guys, I found something that will kind of help ease you into this episode. This is a mini vertical crossbow, so it does have a trigger. It does have a grip, so you don't need to hyperventilate. This is kind of like a gun, but it is a crossbow, and this is made by Hickory Creek Archery. And this thing is awesome because of its small size. This is almost a third of the size of an actual compound bow. Have you gotten to check this out, James?
Yes, absolutely. It's actually a pretty nifty piece of equipment, mainly because of the ability to wind up with some decent feet per second. That if you go look at some of the larger crossbows, I mean, you're talking about, limbs that are probably in excess of, 160, 185 pound, draw weights, which is very significant. And of course, that's why crossbows, are shooting 370, 380 feet per second. And, you have to make sure you've got a decent bag to shoot them at, because they're moving that bolt, really, really quick. And this Mini is actually a really impressive piece of equipment based on weight, based on draw cycle and ability to draw. Some of the videos there, you do kind of wonder, like, what's the feet per second force? Like, some of the ones where like his sons are drawing it. I mean, they're drawing it at 70 pounds. And, with that short of a Mini, brace height, you're not going to be getting a whole heap a lot of feet per second. Is it still enough to, do some great target shooting? Maybe. Would I be really leery of large game shooting it unless you wound up with the 125 or the 150 pound draw weight? Probably so. I'd be a little leery there.
Yeah. And they even got some videos on their website, Draw Lock. That's DRAWLOC.com. Videos of like a 93-year-old man pulling back the a 65-pound version of their vertical crossbow. So it's not the Mini. It's kind of the adult, the big brother version. The Mini is a smaller version of the I guess they call it the bullpup vertical crossbow. So it definitely looks like it's easy, especially with the shortened draw length. You're not going all the way back to your ear necessarily, so you're not having to travel that far with that string to get to lock into position. So with an MSRP of $750, it's ready to go. It's ready to hunt. They include a quiver, 3 arrows, and a scope. So that's one important thing to mention, that this is a scoped crossbow. Obviously, most are. It's kind of interesting. It's definitely something that a prepper would be very into because of its its kind of small footprint, and almost looks. I know that the versions that I'm seeing, especially, I've got a link to a video from Twang and Bang, who's an awesome YouTube star for reviews and stuff. He mentioned that his was kind of the prototype model, and that there'd be kind of a more production, a little bit cleaned up, nicer looking one available. So these are available for pre-order right now. They're not fully in production quite yet, just to know. It's got a 150-pound draw weight limbs, as well as 125-pound and 95-pound. But the 150-pound is a 13-inch power stroke, and it's got 325 feet per second, which is pretty good. I mean, that's what all the bows, the actual compound bows, full size, are going towards, is getting in the 325 to 350 range.
Yeah.
So getting that velocity out of such a small package is actually a pretty impressive feat, and makes it actually usable. And it does have a kind of a foregrip where you can take your support hand, and it's kind of got a vertical grip coming off the side instead of a riser like a traditional bow would. So that's where it makes up in its kind of shortened axle to axle height. Yeah, I mean, this thing, it'd be really useful for hunting in a tree stand for sure, because you're obviously a traditional crossbow who has horizontal limbs. You're going to be restricted to kind of your field of shooting, because your limbs are eventually going to bump into the tree trunk next to you. Whereas this vertical orientation, I mean, you can dang near shoot around the trunk of the tree if you needed to. Plus, they're not that tall, so you don't have to worry about really bumping into your tree stand, any limbs above you. It's a very nice profile that I'd be very interested in seeing somebody taking down a medium-sized deer with this thing. Yeah,
and I think that's one of the things that I guess I was kind of confused to some degree about. And granted, it's small enough that it seems like, because I know Twang and Bang makes a good statement when he makes the comment that for somebody that maybe was handicapped, they could use this with one hand because of the size and the ability to still control it. The only negative I would see is a lot of people that wind up in the sense of, if they have some form of an injury, if they were, for instance, shooting, let's say, out of like a shooting house with an open window, a lot of them would wind up resting a crossbow on top of the, the lower portion of that window so that it could sit there. They weren't holding it up. And then at that point, they can use one hand to basically hold on to, the actual grip and prepare to make the shot and those types of things. You don't get to do that in this case because of the vertical sense of the crossbow. You're not resting this on anything. That's like not an ability at all. You've got to hold it, which is beautiful for in a tree stand where you're, like you said, you're going to be able to turn and kind of get close up against the back of the tree that you're already backed up to. I mean, you can literally put that thing, your left hand could be up against the tree and you could still pull the trigger and make a shot, which you could never do with a regular crossbow. So I think there's beautiful pros and cons both ways. I would just wonder, do you want the ability to rest it somewhere for a lot of those guys maybe that are dealing with some form of an injury, what that may be, where they're down to, to one arm, that kind of thing. It would be difficult to try to hold this thing up, with a deer out there that wouldn't turn for you the right way. And you're trying to hold this thing up with one hand, no matter what its weight is, for any long length of time. Whereas propped up out of your shooting house, I mean, you could sit there as long as you needed to sit before you finally made that, that kill shot.
Right. Yeah. And actually quite a few states only allow the use of crossbows during archery season if you've got a medical reason. For example, my sister shoots a crossbow because she's only got, functional fingers on one hand. So, she went to the doctor and he, filled out the right forms and bam, she's got basically a handicap license to use that crossbow during hunting season. And it's great. In fact, she took one last year, her very first buck. And I believe she was using a bipod or a tripod underneath. Might have been it was a collapsible tripod, a polecat. So of course, being a crossbow, she's able to actually set it on the yoke of some kind of support system and do that. And it's a very heavy crossbow. I myself can barely hold it at the ready for longer than a couple of minutes without starting to get kind of fatigued. Mm-hmm. So I can definitely see your point there, but. Because this has a very kind of skeletonized look to it, it looks like it'd be a little bit lighter.
Yeah, and it is.
At least what I'm seeing in these videos, the actual kind of skeletonized shoulder area seems to be very generous in size. So if you had all your hunting gear on, a couple layers of coats and that whatnot, you'd still be able to get a good purchase inside your shoulder pocket. Whether or not that weight is something that you can hold out there for your shot long enough, that's really up to you and your physique. But you can certainly have this thing cocked with an arrow knocked, and that's another nice feature about this that it inherits from its larger brother, is that there's actually a patent pending anti-dry fire system to where if there's no arrow that's knocked, you can't shoot. So it's kind of a nice feature as well. But you could basically have an arrow knocked in there and then, have it, kind of hanging down at your side, not at the ready until you're ready to pull it up. One thing I did want to make note, if you're visualizing this in your head, you're thinking of vertical crossbow, so the limbs are vertical and it's scoped. How does the string not hit the scope? Well, I'm so glad you asked, hypothetically. It's got an offset scope mount, much like if you had an AK-47 and you had that kind of mount that came up off the side of the receiver and hung over the top of the dust cover. It's very much like that. So it kind of puts the scope off center from the arrow. So you've got to sight this thing in a little bit uniquely. When Twang and Bang was shooting it, he described that he basically had the crosshairs zeroed, just up and to the right of, where the arrow was impacting, and it's within, probably like an inch and a half at, I forget how many yards, maybe it was 30 to 40 yards. But it's just, setting it up like that. Of course, anything that has a bore that's not perfectly parallel with the optic, you're going to have some, just like having a laser off the side of your gun instead of right underneath the barrel. There's going to be a point where those two, the line of sight and the trajectory, kind of cross and then come off path again. So you're going to have to set that up ideally either as slightly less parallel or right on the money at a certain yardage. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. So a crank is available if you are handicapped or disabled or unable to lock this back and cock it, there is a crank available that you can mount on here, and it'll help you get that bowstring back all the way. It's very cool. I very much encourage you guys to check out the YouTube videos from the man himself, Twang and Bang. I've got the link in the show notes for that. It's very cool. It'll make you want one. So next up, I actually wanted to talk about one of the new bows that came out this year. This is the Hoyt Carbon Spider ZT. And this is probably arguably one of the more unique modern bow designs that we've seen for quite a while. It's kind of taken the compound bow and pushing it to something that looks very futuristic. I mean, if this came out 10 years ago, people would have been losing their minds. So based on its name, carbon, it is made out of some really lightweight carbon technology that it takes on this kind of spindling shape, almost like antlers or some kind of plant system from a tree. It's not a traditional looking setup that you'd normally see on a bow. How would you describe that?
Yeah, that's about as good as you're going to get in the sense of trying to describe it. It is extremely different in the sense of its overall structural design as far as the riser is concerned compared to any other bow company that's out there at this point in time. I mean, it stands out. It looks basically like, some form of root system that's kind of just interwoven amongst itself. It's got it has a really good look to it.
Yeah. So that, of course, it makes it ridiculously light. It's probably one of the lightest risers you're ever going to find on a bow. So it is available in 3 configurations: a 30 and 34-inch axle. They've came up. This isn't exactly brand new because they've had the Carbon Spider for it's been a couple years.
Yeah.
They had the 30, the 34, and those are just ZTs. This is the ZT Turbo, and the difference between that is instead of the Z5 cam, and for those who don't know archery and are barely hanging along with me, I really appreciate it and hope you learned something through this. But the cams are basically the rotating wheels on either end of the limbs that basically rotate as you pull the string back, and that's where you get some of your let off, and all of your kinetic energy is kind of stored there. So it uses a different cam system, and of course it has a higher FPS than the previous models. So like the 30 and the 34 Spider ZTs were about 332 to 330 FPS. This is up to 350. And so then they do have a LD model that gets it's actually got less FPS. It's about 340 feet per second. The brace height is 6 inches, and the mass weight is 3.8 pounds, with an axle-to-axle height of 33 inches. So the draw range in between those, you got 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 55 to 65, and 60 to 70 pounds. So you've got a good range there if you want to tune it down for just shooting targets, either competitively or just recreationally. And then you've got a heavier weight that you can set to actually using for game. Really thick skin game that you want to drive that arrow through the hide. Do you have any experience with these bows, James?
Yeah, as I have one of the original carbon elements, so we're probably talking, 2 years maybe. I think mine's a 2013, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it's a 14. And look, I love the bow. I mean, obviously I think I know a little more about bows than I know about guns, but I don't know enough about either of those two subjects. So, but when you start talking about bows in general, like I know that on this show, you probably have this massive conversation all the time behind, whether or not you're supposed to be shooting a Springfield or a Glock. And like, there's all these fanboys of every direction and, that kind of thing. And when you start talking about bows, people that are into archery, it's the exact same thing. I mean, there's Hoyt guys that will never shoot anything but Hoyts their entire life. The same thing with Matthews and the same thing with other bow companies. It is the Cadillac, and I don't say that necessarily because of the technology. More importantly, I would say cost-wise, the Hoyt, the Carbon is the Cadillac of the archery industry. You can buy almost any other top-of-the-line bow from any other company for $899, $999 kind of thing would normally be a bare bow. That's high end still for those companies. And here you're talking about spending, which I did. I mean, I have a Carbon Element that I spent, $1,400 on, and I love it. It is a fantastic shooting bow. I don't really intend to sell it, even though I shoot a different bow now that I'm really, really addicted to. It's been really nice. I shoot an Obsession Evolution that I just have fallen in love with. But at the same time, I still have my Hoyt. It's what I took to Manitoba on my bear hunt. It didn't let me down. It has a different draw cycle to me, and the thing that I'm looking for, me personally, more than anything else, is I want a bow that I can hold. I want to, when I get it back, I want it to stay there, and I don't want it to ever want to come out of my hand. And my Hoyt does a good job of that. Some previous bows that I owned a Helium, and being a short draw guy anyway, like I'm 28 inches, and so being a short draw guy anyway, my Helium never allowed that cam to roll all the way over, so you always had to keep it held back, and you had to know you were keeping it held back. If you started to let off, that cam wants to take off. That's what gives it that foot per second, as far as actually moving. But it's a fantastic bow system. I mean, they've done some great things. The ZT technology is actually really impressive. One of the huge things in archery is torque. It is a massive thing. Every company is going to talk to you about torque, about how their cam doesn't torque, the limbs, or how, their roller guard doesn't torque this, or how, it's just a massive thing in archery. Every company will talk about it. And, they claim that they've kind of, somewhat perfected the roller guard system the cable guard, so that, it's actually reducing the amount of torque that's placed on those limbs as, you get ready to draw, which is huge, because the goal is to draw a perfectly straight line backwards with a bow that doesn't want to lean and torque at all, so that when you let go, it wants to shoot a perfectly straight line forward. And the more anything is leaning, you can obviously tell that you're going to wind up having issues that you have to try to correct, through tuning and those kinds of things. As you talked about the Spider, the Turbo, I would like to add, the brace height there being 6 inches, it's known in the archery world that the longer the brace height, typically the more forgiving a bow is. So the more opportunity you have not to have to be perfect with form, and with, hand torque and those things. And the Turbo has been made faster because it has a 6-inch brace height compared to 6 3/4 that you would see in the 30 and the 34. And so that's where they get the increased foot per second, which is terrific for people that are hunting speed. But a lot of times you have to struggle to give up some forgiveness to get the extra speed. And, at the same time, for some people, 6 inches doesn't bother them at all as far as the brace height is concerned. I would just, add, if this is the first bow you're ever going to buy, don't let 350 foot per second, be the talking point as to why you wound up buying it. And I'll close that by saying this in the sense of archery in general. Whatever you do, don't ever buy a bow just because someone told you it was awesome. You go out and shoot every one of them. That's the nice thing, like, at least at my gun shop, I haven't ever got to walk in and say, I need to shoot these 12 Glocks so I can figure out which one I want. They kind of sit in the cabinet and they're like, which one do you want? And you buy it and then you can go shoot it. But, with archery equipment, you don't have that problem. I mean, you could walk into any archery store and go, I want to shoot that bow, and that bow, and then walk out and go to the next archery store and shoot that bow, and that bow, because every bow is going to feel different to you. And what may be great for me or you may not be great for the next guy. And so, but I love my Hoyt. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's fast. It's really quiet, really vibration free. It just, it doesn't shoot like my Obsession Evolution does, and I'm not pushing them, but I'm just saying, as far as the hold for me, I could literally hold that Evolution, I'm telling you, for minutes at a time and never find fatigue. You have to push the string forward to make it want to go. And when you got a deer that's walking in and then he doesn't commit and he turns the wrong way and you're still waiting, the last thing you want is shaky arms because of you getting fatigued,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well said. I don't think I could have said any of that better myself. So, thanks for all that insight. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice to be able to try these out. I mean, most big box stores like Gander Mountain, Cabela's, they'll have a built-in shooting lane, like in a back room, kind of by the archery counter, where you can bring your existing bow in and have them take a look at what's going on with it, but you can also try them out. If you buy a bow that someone says, "Oh man, you need to get this Matthews because it's the greatest thing since sliced bread," that's how you end up trying 3 or 4 bows, wasting a lot of money, and then ultimately falling out of the sport. Um, Unfortunately, that's you really need to find what's better for your body, your shooting style, what your intended purposes are. If you want an all around bow to you can take to some 3D target shoots, and then also take bow hunting. Or if you just strictly want something to shoot in the backyard, or you want to get on the professional circuit and start shooting some IBO shoots. I mean, all these things go into consideration. There's really few bows that do everything perfectly, but there's a lot of bows that are great hunting bows as well as target bows. And I think that this one is a little bit is good at both. But like you said, that forgiveness factor is huge. If you're getting older and you fatigue a lot faster, if you cant the bow a little bit, that can drastically affect the path of your arrow depending on just how that bow set up. I mean, my Carrera, I mean, if you were canting one side to the other, that's the way your arrow was going. And it seems like with the my dad's Hoyt Katera, it doesn't really matter if you can't left, if that bubble in the sight's touching the line on either sides, it's still going straight right in there. So definitely got to give these things a trying out when you can. Just to mention on this Spider ZT, it's got some things in there to help make it quiet. So when you're actually using this in the field, so it's got a shock rod technology to kill noise and vibration. It's not an absolute term as far as it doesn't eliminate all vibration, but it is a nice system on there to help reduce that, as well as it's got air shocks, which is they call the most efficient limb dampeners in archery. So that's kind of a nice thing if you miss your shot from your tree stand. If your bow is not going to make a loud twang, there's a chance that your buck doesn't really notice much. It depends on how much in the rut, how horny he is. But, it's nice to have a bow that's, doesn't sound like someone's slamming a car door in the middle of the woods.
Definitely.
So I got the link in the show notes for that. The website's hoyt.com. Just check out their compounds and look up the Carbon Spider ZT. And like we said, but the MSRP I found is $1,449. That is extremely pricey, and I don't think anyone's going to spend that much on their first bow unless their first gun happened to be a Dan Wilson 1911 or Wilson Combat 1911, something like that. If you've got that money and you want to get into a sport and just go whole hog into it, more power to you. But I think that's maybe somebody who's been shooting for a while and they're looking to maybe upgrade to a new bow. This would be a good option for them too. So now we're going to talk about a very cool site that has been created that, a lot of people have a hard time when they get their pin sights, setting them up or moving them from one bow to another. Getting that thing zeroed in. You can spend just as much time at the archery range as you would an actual shooting range trying to get something zeroed without using some kind of cheater method. So luckily, Trophy Ridge has put out a site called the React Pro, and this site's really cool. The main feature of it, it's a 5-pin site, with fiber optics in the pins. But the great thing about this is first you zero in your 20-yard pin, and then you basically can set, zero any other yardage on any other pin besides the 20. So you can, if the farthest you're going to shoot is 60, so you take that last pin and you get it. Basically, you can rotate this ocular on there to move those 5 other pins. The 20-yard pin stays stationary, while those other pins move, and they actually move at different distances, much like if you're winding a clock and you've got your minute hand that spins, but you've got your hour hand that spins much slower. Similar concept. The 50 and 60-yard pins move much greater up and down than say your 30 and 40. And so that's all kind of the mathematics is built into this thing, so that once you zero your 60-yard pin, everything in between should be set to go, because they've taken your trajectory of your arrow. Once you got 20 and once you got 60, the site has kind of done all the guesswork for you, and so your 30, 40, and 50-yard pin should be right on the money.
Yeah, the site is really, really impressive. It seems gimmicky, like for those people that have ever spent, the countless amount of time that you would possibly spend trying to set up a stupid site, and you think you've got things right, and you need to move just ever so slightly, just one of those pins, and every single time that you try to loosen an Allen wrench to move it or whatever else, it drops to the bottom, and you kind of have to guess where you had it back. And they've done a lot of research and a lot of work in the sense of trying to get it right. The Pro is very, very nice, mainly to me because it's aluminum construction. The other one is more out of some form of plastic, the original React site, and I really like the aluminum being on there. You don't have to worry about stripping out threads, as much, and those kinds of things. It's got, micro adjustments, and which is really, really nice as far as trying to get all of that stuff set up. But if you go look at any of the people that are online, I've not come across anybody right now. I did see one guy that had a comment like now he was using what's called the React 1, which is a single pin site which if you don't know, a single pin site, you move that site every time you need to change the yardage. So you actually have a lever, let's say, if you want to think of it that way, that helps to swing the pendulum. And then you would have a tape deck that says, 20, 30, 40, 50, and you could move it to get there. Well, he had a problem where his 80, I think, was hitting at 70, but he well admitted that he had spent email time with Trophy Ridge, that they were helping him out tremendously as far as trying to fix it. And he said more than likely it was his fault because they had not had any other times where this has happened, but he was going to send it back in, et cetera, and that kind of thing. But everybody else that you see, I mean, they set this thing up and it is dead on. I would say the easiest way to do it is set your 20, probably set your 30, because it's right there already. It's very close, whereas backing up to 60 yards, you haven't dialed it at all. So you wind up missing a bag target, and that's not a lot of fun. So I would say you would kind of set it at 30 to get it on paper, and then I would flat out back up to your max distance, and then I would set that pin perfectly. And when you're there, your 50's on, your 40's on, your 30's on, and you rock and roll. And boy, that sure does take a ton of time out of dealing with all that. Several people that I saw said they're shooting better groups than they ever shot, and it may be just because the math has been added in and it's just more accurate. I mean, they've looked at what it would take based on foot per second and drop. So that's why those pin gaps kind of get created for you already. So it's really, really, really neat. I actually am very seriously leaning towards putting the single pin. I'm not a multi-pin kind of guy, but the single pin sight on my bow to get ready for my hunt in August. I'm torn as to whether or not I change my setup as it is now, but this would make it really easy to fix the setup. So because it's not really complicated to get it done. So it's really, really neat.
Yeah. The nice thing too is that it's kind of set up so that you don't really need tools to adjust much at all.
Yeah.
It's got that knob on the bottom. I think I called it an ocular earlier, but it's really a knob at the bottom that you rotate to get that to turn or get those pins to move up and down. But it's got second and third axis leveling, which means that as you mount it to your bow, some bows have kind of a universal way of how they a sight can mount onto the side, but all sights will have maybe 5 to 6 different holes to really get it fine-tuned to your specific bow, because all bows are different. But the nice thing is that you can actually get this thing zeroed and leveled for that second and third axis. So if it's you can tilt your bow down. It might sound super complicated for somebody who's just looking to build their first bow or get this put on their first bow. But it's really good for someone who's kind of OCD and really wants to know that everything, the first, second, third axes are like square and level, using bubbles to check those. This has that built in, and it's got toolless adjustments. So all you got to do is just loosen these thumb screws to make your adjustments, as well as if you want to, you're sighting in your bow and you're doing your windage, it's just got a very easy loosen the thumb screw, move the thing over, and then tighten it down with your fingers, and you should be set to go.
Yep, and that whole second and third axis comes into a really big deal when you're not standing on flat ground shooting. You wind up in a situation where you're shooting up and down hills and you have an axis that's off. You will quickly find out that arrows don't land where you want them to land. And that's unfortunate. We don't like doing that, when we're gun hunting. But a lot of times with a bow and arrow, especially if you're hunting, an arrow not landing where you want it to land can be like very catastrophic to your success of either A, being able to harvest the animal, or B, whether or not you're worried that you just, severely injured an animal that, you're going to track for, the whole next day.
Yep. So it's just 9.5 ounces. It's got a glow ring for kind of that really helps with that low light situation. Same thing with the fiber optics in those pins is really, it's not really new technology. It's in most pin sights actually, but it's super nice to have because, come dusk time or sunrise, that really helps gather more light so that you can line up your peep on your string with your sight much faster. You're not having to look in the dark for it.
Yeah, and just like Tony, unfortunately, with his wonderful state that doesn't let him have and own anything gun wise, I will warn you, especially regarding the sight, the light that is actually on the sight, which you can turn on, and all it does is that it helps to illuminate the actual fibers. Make sure you check that out in your current state and make sure that's legal, because several states wouldn't do so. They consider that basically to be illegal for you, illuminating your sights to shoot in low light dusk type situations. And so just kind of check that out before you go turning it on and seeing the game warden come walk up on you.
Yeah. I think they got that Washington too. Nothing electronic on the bow because it's supposed to be a primitive weapon. So
yeah.
I think my girlfriend's bow has a little like single LED light thing that screws into the sight housing and helps illuminate those pins. So I just told her to pull that thing out anywhere close to the fall season, just so there's no mistake.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't even have Luminox either. Can you believe that?
Yeah, which is beautiful. I went and did some hunting in Illinois, and it's the same way there. At least it was then. That was 2 years ago. But that was a problem that apparently my illuminated arrows were going to somehow miraculously either help me kill deer at night, which figure that one out, or anything else that possibly could go wrong with it. I mean, the only thing I can see is a positive of knowing that I made a good shot or a bad shot, and knowing whether or not I need to track something or whether or not I need to back out and give that that animal time. I mean, that's government for you right there.
I think that's one of the coolest innovations that have happened to archery in a while, because you can recover your arrow faster and then be able to tell whether it's clean or whether it's got some blood on there. You can even tell by the viscosity of the blood whether it went through the lungs or maybe it got it in the liver. But then not only that, but it makes good footage, man. If you want to film your hunt, what's a better way to have a lighted arrow so it's almost like a tracer for your arrow. I think that just all the best archery films that I've seen are using those things, and being in Washington State, I'm kind of, not invited to the party. Unless I guess I could, I bet if I zip tied a glow stick to my arrow, they would still probably find me for that. So back to this React Pro by Trophy Ridge. The MSRP is $249.99, so you're looking at about $250. Street price, you probably find it a little bit lower than that. Yeah, definitely look into it if you're one of those guys that loves to tinker with your bow and make sure everything is set, because it should make it really easier for you. I know I hate taking the Allen wrenches out and kind of individually moving the pins, and you loosen it too far and then it just drops, and then you got to reset the whole thing. It just makes something that's very low tech much more convenient. So that's at trophyridge.com is the website for that. So next up, we got a product from, is it Rackham is how they pronounce their company name? Rackham back.
Yep, that's it.
So these guys make some interesting arrowheads, and actually I believe James is going to review one of those products today. I think we talked about it on our previous show, but I'll let you get into it. But we're actually going to talk about a similar product they also offer. So they're going to get kind of a two for a plug today. This is the bow shot, and what this is a an arrowhead that acts as a delivery system for actual some steel shot in the tip of your arrow. So as you launch your bow back, you've got all that energy, that's kind of forcing that steel shot. And when you impact your target, it just flies out of that arrowhead. So they're preloaded, pre-sealed, and just you can get an 8-pack for, let's see, about $10.99. You can get a 16-pack for $14.99. So it's just kind of a different take on an arrowhead. You're not using a bludgeon or just something that's solid rubber. And you're not. I'm kind of interested as to the penetration on certain game. I think definitely for small game, this would be something worth trying. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm not going to necessarily get too much into, my review of their other arrowheads, only because I know that these two things are very similar to one another. I think I see way more cons than I can say I see positives, and my only real reason for that is that, I mean, to me, I think I remember you talking on one of your previous episodes, trying to talk about having something that would be able to. I think you were talking about what the bullets that wind up they're connected. What are those called? The
multiple impact bullets.
Yeah, the multiple impact bullets. And I think we were talking about whether or not that would help you in the sense of trying to to get birds and other game when you're kind of out in the woods, as far as having a bigger, array of a shot to try to help out with getting something like that, which, this idea of having steel shot come fly out of an arrow is brilliant, other than the fact that the only time it's going to fly out is if you hit the target that you're looking to hit. I mean, you miss a squirrel by shooting, an inch and a half to the right of his body. I don't care what you've got on the end of it, unless you've, got Rambo's grenades, he's still going to walk away. And so, if I was going to hit him with a broadhead that I would already have, he's not surviving that. Like, in any capacity, there's no, way that he's going to walk away from having, 100 grain rage or Killzone or any other type of broadhead go flying through him. He's not going to get through that. None of the small game are going to. And as you go up from there, I would just be hesitant. Like, I think, they have it marked down to take, like coyotes with it or whatever else. I'd be really hesitant to be shooting something, that large of a scale without trying to, put a 2-inch hole through him, with an actual broadhead. I mean, I took my turkey this year, my first turkey of my life, with my bow, and I mean, he never moved. And steel shot would have been great, but I guess if I'm going to put a steel shot through him, then I'm going to point, Benelli, directly at him and let it fly. I mean, because then it's over. You ain't got to worry about it, kind of thing. And so if it was helping me get more game because I was having trouble with stuff getting away, I would be really excited about it. Like, I mean, if I could shoot something that was going to, I don't know, somehow miraculously open up a 12-inch net, that was going to miraculously catch and kill what I needed to kill humanely, that would be great. But in this case, you better have, dead set accuracy. And if you're going to, why not just do that with a broadhead to begin with,
Right. I mean, they've got a video on their page where they show it going into ballistics gelatin, and actually a lot of the BBs look like they bounce out of the gelatin, like on impact, instead of going in necessarily. They also shoot a turkey. It seems to, of course, direct impact, put it down pretty quickly. But they also shoot a raccoon that's kind of perched on a branch, and the arrow actually sticks inside the raccoon because it's the range is pretty close. So the fact is that it's not necessarily the shot that's putting that raccoon down humanely. It's the fact that you're hitting it with an arrowhead that's delivering all that kinetic energy into the body of the animal that's really doing all of your terminal damage.
Yep.
If I was to shoot something that I plan on eating, I would not use this because I don't like picking a shot out of meat.
Right.
It's really hard on the teeth when you don't get it and you've already cooked it, and you're chomping down on your turkey or your rabbit, and then catches it right on a filling. Oh, it's terrible. Yeah. So why would I do that when I could have easily used a rubber bludgeon, which I've smoked rabbits and squirrels with a rubber bludgeon. It works well. It's just like good night, hitting it with a jackhammer. And if you're looking for something that's a little bit bigger, like you said, man, a broadhead is going to definitely cause more internal damage. It's going to penetrate, get the lungs, get the liver, get the heart, and, it's going to just bleed them out very, very quickly. So this is, I would say, something a little bit more gimmicky, and unfortunately, this, if I can't think of anything other than hunting that you'd want to use this for, and I wouldn't even want to use it for hunting for those reasons that I've stated. So this isn't something that you're gonna like shoot in your backyard for fun, because it's not really gonna do anything. I mean, you're gonna put lead shot into your target, and that's it. It's not really, it doesn't have any kind of wow factor for me. Now, if instead of using all the small shot that looks like what more traditional bird shot would be, if there was like 4 buckshot, like triple out buckshot pellets in there, and those were what kind of like left as it hit, okay, that to me, I don't know if that necessarily be better than any of those things, but to me it would be kind of more, oh man, I want to shoot a rabbit with that and see what happens. That rabbit's got a 0 chance of survival anyway, because I'm going to be hitting it. Even if this setup had no steel shot in it, or the shot wasn't able to leave the arrow tip at all, the plastic seal housing, it's still delivering energy. It's still going to do damage. So it's just kind of interesting. I know there's some people that are just really into archery, and anything that's new and innovative they're going to want to try. They've got a very similar product in that, in fact, it looks like it's the same technology, but instead of shot, it's got kind of preloaded scent inside the arrowhead. So this would be like when you're in your stand, or you're kind of going out in your field and you want to put bait, like scented bait out there, you would shoot these arrowheads or shoot these arrows out into the field and not actually walk into the field and spread your human scent around. So they're available in 4 popular big game scents. I mean, it just looks like an arrowhead with animal piss in it, honestly. I don't know if they actually use urine, or whether they're using something else that's granular, but same technology that they're trying to push to a couple different purposes for hopes of success.
Yeah. I'd have a problem with the scent situation only because, and I guess that's fine for right then, but I'm not going to leave an arrow sitting out there, so I'm going to go get it anyway, right? And my issue is that, I mean, I'm going to put my scent in that place. Like, I guess the thought that it's just going to miraculously go away in the next, several hours until I come back that evening to hunt again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, granted, you could go pick it up and not come back for a few weeks or a week or whatever else, and then your scent, I'm sure, is cleared out. But, I just assume, be careful about how I wash my clothes and, what I've sprayed down with, and then on my way to my stand, squirt whatever I want to squirt out of a bottle, than having to, get up in a stand and, shoot an arrow into the deadgum ground, just so that I can have scent come out. So
yeah, that is funky.
Yeah, it's definitely an odd system. I mean, like, the only time I could see this being positive is I have a really cheap, crappy arrow, and it's a neighbor's property that I want to shoot and get some scent on. Then maybe you could say that I'll just leave the arrow over there and it doesn't matter. But other than that, like, what in the world? Like, just find your own scent, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Or fill these up with some kind of like onion and cayenne and garlic, and you want deer to not come into that area. Like, if you got an apple orchard, you could shoot these into your orchard and spread some scent that's going to drive the game away. Yeah, there you go. Rack a back. That's some free ideas for you right there. So now we're gonna get into the main discussion of FI reviews, and you're gonna talk about another rack and back product, aren't you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I finally broke down, and I had seen several times several individuals talking about the bow mag, and to be honest, I guess I more wanted to make the effort to try them because the other reviews seemed so negative that I wanted to see whether or not, okay, maybe it's user error or it's something along that line. But after you get to doing some serious, research, you'll quickly realize that that's about how it is for all the reviews. Like, none of them are like, holy cow, you got to have this product. It is basically the exact same thing that we just talked about in the sense of the bow shot, except it does not contain its own powder, its own delivery system for the actual pellets. As a matter of fact, you're going to put a 38 Special or a 357 Magnum round inside of this, this broadhead. It's very simple to put together. I will give them that. Several things about the initial setup was very odd to me. You're basically going to take a 315 grain field point to sight your bow in, and that's fine. I did have some success after I sighted it in with the bow mag actually hitting where the 315 grain field point was. But my negative to that is, at the same time, it is a 315 grain field point. And I mean, most people that do any archery hunting are looking at 100 to 125 grain, arrowhead. I mean, that's about the maximum that they're going to wind up going. And here you are sticking more than twice that on the front end of an arrow, and the end result of that. I mean, whereas I now, in a perfect shooting condition with everything right, would be willing to reach out at 50 and 60 yards and to take, an animal, a deer, any large animal like that. I would never be willing to do that at 315 grains because the fall off has to be drastic at that distance. I mean, pin gaps are going to get, massive. I dare say if you went back and you used, our Trophy Ridge sight that we talked about earlier, you may not ever get that 60-yard pin down to 60 yards. It may have maxed out by that point and just can't go any further. And so, just like it was with pretty much everybody else that you could watch videos on, there's a whole bunch of them. Twang and Bang's got one. As a matter of fact, he has to break out the inline crossbow, the full size one, to even try to get anything out of these actual broadheads. But I've put my first two targets, or my first two shots, into an older archery bag target, but it's a very firm outside, layer. Like, it's not soft at all. I mean, any deer hide is much softer than this thing is. And as a matter of fact, shot both of them and it was dead silent. So apparently Rack 'em Back has invented a maybe full state legal silencer for archery equipment, because both of those went off inside of the bag and they made absolutely zero noise. I'm assuming just because it's filled with, kind of cottony like material that's stuffed in there. There was zero noise from the 357 round going off at all. Not a single sound. It just sounded like hitting a bag target. And part of the biggest problem, and kind of what we talked about with the actual bow shot, is that the biggest issue that I have is that there is no way to control the force of the actual explosion that occurs inside of that, that shell, inside, of the casing. And so because of that, the casing peels open like you would, peel open, a Coke can. You could just, if you just were to cut it down the middle, that's how it opens up. Well, all the force that you want to drive the bullet forward in the direction that you're shooting, you don't get. And so because of that, you wind up with a situation where, I mean, I have a 357 round go off inside of a bag target, and yet it doesn't even exit the bag target. And as well as I do, you throw a 357 round in your revolver and you pull the trigger from 20 yards, it's going through that bag target and through anything behind it until it hits something solid. That's just the force that's there behind it. And it doesn't get that ability. I finally actually had one of the 6 rounds go off in what you would define as a quote, a pop, an actual gun sound. as I shot a McKenzie. Like I have a zombie target that we have that my son loves to shoot with his bow, and I shot it, and it finally did go off. But yet, after it went off, I buried the next 2 rounds inside of the zombie target. And just like you said, in the sense of even their own videos, what really would have happened is I'd have killed the zombie because I drove the front end of a funky looking broadhead into his body, but I didn't kill him because of the force of the actual 357 round going off. And, to me, that's a huge negative, because we don't want, as bow hunters, we're fine if an arrow doesn't go through, but it's not our goal. Our goal is, a perfect double lung shot, complete pass through, stick an arrow in the ground on the other side, and we know we've done our job. And, when you have the force of, a bullet going off at the end of an arrow, the only thing it can do is stop forward momentum of that arrow. And so you can forget pass-throughs with this product because it's not going to happen. And then on top of that, you have either failure to fire, or you have it firing, but yet there's really no force that's being created by the actual 357 round going off. So the end result is, not a good scenario, for you actually trying to use things lethally. On their videos, they are shooting, they shoot a headshot, I think, on a wild hog. Look, while I wouldn't care and could care less if, somebody wanted to blow $33 times 6 plus 357 ammo on every, feral hog that exists, because, they're nothing but trouble. And while I could care less whether or not you technically were injuring feral hogs, because they are still nothing but trouble, there's no way that I could ever find myself trying to use it on anything that I actually wanted to take. I mean, like the box alone, which is quite impressive. The box alone, I mean, it has a caribou basically listed as one of the animals that you could shoot with this thing. And there is nowhere that I could think of that I could be going on a hunt where someone, if I were, paying them for a caribou hunt, they would watch me screw this thing on to the end of my arrow and be okay with it. Like, they would probably lose their mind over, what was going to happen. And so, I can't say a whole lot of positive things, to be honest, about them. I mean, like I said, setup was nice. That part was good. But other than that, not really a whole lot left there. Their claim to fame is basically the Bowmag Arrowhead combines the stealth delivery of an arrow with the power of a 38 or 357 Magnum bullet, effectively turning your compound bow into an even deadlier silent hunting tool. Target market would be bow hunters. Features and benefits off of their website, as well as several others. Perfect for big game, nuisance animals, and varmints. Fits most conventional arrows and bolts. Has lethal killing power. Has magnum impact with maximum force, and it holds any 38 or 357 bullet. There are no changes. You get one size, and that's pretty much it. That's all you're going to get. There was an Amazon review that there's multiple Amazon reviews that weren't very positive. I tried to search for some actual, other, hunting and outfitters like that. There were several of them that brought mention of it, like in several magazines, but they never quite said anything in the sense of a review. This guy doesn't have much good to say. He's basically a waste of money without sufficient strength to contain the pressure of the enclosed round. These allow the casing to split, shattering the arrowhead and often the arrow itself without imparting sufficient energy into the bullet to penetrate anywhere near deep enough to be useful. And he's pretty much exactly right. That was my experience with it as well. I did not have a problem with it breaking my arrow, probably due to the fact that I shoot an arrow that has an outsert. So everything for the last inch and a half of my arrow is all metal versus having actual, you sitting there with aluminum or composite that's up against, the edge of the actual shell before it goes off. So I didn't struggle with that whatsoever. I bought mine for, I think, $33.15 or so on Amazon. I have some pros and cons. It was tough to give you any pros. It does look awesome. I mean, you're screwing it on and you kind of feel like Rambo for a second. If you think that shooting a bullet with a bow sounds interesting, it does sound interesting. They do appear to be safe. That is one thing that I will add. They go off so little as of actually shooting them. You don't have to worry about hurting yourself while you're putting these together. I was really worried I could drop it out of a stand, from 30 feet and it would go off. And I'm pretty positive that almost seems impossible based on my experience with them. Cons, very poor reliability, lose distance due to heavy arrowhead, questionable lethality. I would say very questionable lethality. Expensive in the sense of, having to go through. These are not reusable. So when the actual 357 round goes off, it's done. You have the back part is still left there, and maybe you could order just the uppers, but I don't think you can. And so you're going to spend $33 to buy 6, arrowheads every time, plus the cost of 357 ammo at the same time. So it is expensive. It can destroy arrows. Like I said, I didn't have that experience just because of my outsert. And as well, you do have to worry about the legality in some states. You're gonna struggle with places where archery hunting is not allowed at all during gun season. And here you are attaching a bullet to the end of an arrow, and vice versa, where, gun hunting is not allowed whatsoever in archery season. And so I think you're going to wind up in a situation where, you're going to have some real big issues with individuals. My biggest issue is that I don't ever intend to draw on an animal that I don't want down as fast as I can get them down. And that's what I love about bow hunting, is the challenge of that. And this would be something that, if I had hogs running free on my property, which I will soon because they're already getting close to us. But if they were, I'm going to do everything I can to either A, I'm going to go out, I'm going to take my AR out and enjoy some time, or B, I'm, going to put a broadhead in places where, I expect a lethal kill as quickly as I can, with as much penetration as I can, and nothing to hinder that. With the hide of, a feral hog being as thick as it is, you do worry about broadhead penetration. And if you're worried about broadhead penetration, good gracious, you better be worried about a bow mag penetration, because it's going to be way worse. So that's kind of where I would leave that. My score was a 2.5. I didn't really know if I could go that low, to be honest, but I did. Most of the things y'all review are not that low, and so I gave it that only because I could not see myself ever adding this to my repertoire of things I would use. I did enjoy the experience of trying to shoot them. But you probably couldn't get that $33 out of me again, if I had to. They just changed it, as a matter of fact, right before I bought it several months ago. They changed it to where it has a metal pin. There was all kinds of problems with the actual pin housings breaking, and so they used to give you 6, uppers, the part that the bullet actually goes in, and then they would give you 6 actual pins that have the shank on it that would go down inside the arrow. Now they give you 6 uppers and they give you 2 lowers. Those 2 lowers are metal housed with some plastic where it kind of screws in, but supposedly they last longer. And I did not have a problem with those things per se, even though I did have a round that failed to go off. And it did create, an actual indentation in the primer. I just don't know if it was just not firm enough, or more importantly, what it looked like was that it pushed the bullet out of the front end as I hit the target. Well, you can imagine if you're trying to push the firing pin from the rear and the bullet can slide forward more, it's not going to do a whole lot of good. And so that, to me, that's why that one failed to go off. The rest of them actually went off. It's just that they did nothing in the sense of going off. And so, that's my review of it. Like I said, I still enjoyed the experience of reviewing it and doing so, but you're not going to see any in my bow case anytime soon.
So the that nose cone, I noticed that it's got some just lines that are pre-cut into it. So that's what collapses on impact and drives that bullet back into the firing pin.
Right. It's supposed to collapse on impact and to push it in the rear. The problem is that, at least in the one that I had, and I took a picture of it, but it was so blurry, but the one that I had that failed to actually fire, it was opened up to the point that the bullet was sticking further out. So it peeled it back off of it almost like a banana, and so and that was inside of me shooting the McKenzie, zombie target. And that target, like I said in my review, you're not shooting an animal like on this planet that I can think of, maybe an alligator, that is going to have harder outer skin than that zombie target. Like, that thing it's firm on the outside. And so I don't know if it just, peeled it, and as it did, it allowed that bullet to have some kind of free range movement so that it wouldn't shove it the rest of the way into the firing pin. But it's kind of a letdown that one didn't go off,
Yeah.
So
Well, and I mean, there's broadheads out there that are marketed specifically for increased penetration, if that's what you're concerned about. I mean, we're
Yep.
not bound to archaic, fragile broadheads anymore. I mean, there's one-piece models that are for their promotions or marketing, they shoot them through cinder blocks all day long. So if that's what you're concerned about, whether you are hunting alligators in Florida, or I don't know if TJ's got alligators in Louisiana, but if you're shooting hogs, if that's your concern, there is broadhead products out there for that. This is gimmicky, and I think we can all kind of agree on that. It doesn't make it less cool as far as cool factor. When I first saw this, I wanted to try it. It's like, I've got a 357, I've got a bow, bam, I want to be Rambo for a day. And then shortly after looking at some of these videos and reviews, my urge and my desire to try it out diminished because I kind of saw how weak it is. The bow, shooting an animal with a bow, is the greatest strength in that is that you're not disturbing nature around you. And I don't mean to get all touchy-feely on you guys, but I mean, literally, you're taking a shot, something that's going to harvest the life from another human being, or not, I'm sorry, and well, if you're Rambo, but if you're another living being, and as you hit that animal or miss, you're not disturbing the other creatures around you necessarily. I mean, there's lots of guys who are lucky enough to miss their first shot, and the animal doesn't really move much and just kind of looks up like, oh, what was that? That was a fast bug, and gives you an opportunity for a fast follow-up shot. This product almost eliminates that, because if you miss and hit a rock and it detonates, or you have a bad shot on the animal and it detonates, everything's getting the heck out of there because of the percussion. But then again, based on what I've seen, and that if you don't hit something solid enough, it will not detonate. Maybe you won't have that problem. In fact, some videos with on Twang and Bang's channel where he was trying to shoot it into ballistics gelatin so it would have some kind of measurable effect. He had a hard time doing that because the gelatin didn't offer enough resistance for that round to go off. So I think one of his first conclusions were he's not sure if this would go off if it entered an animal. So he actually had, I think he put some denim or cardboard or maybe some very thin plywood in front of it in order to have that initial resistance so it'd go off. But I'm certainly glad that you picked these up, and you basically saved me $30-40 by doing this. So I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome. I was just looking out for you, Ryan. That's all it was. So
yeah. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking, well, shoot, I could do something, make something in my shop. I'm going to go ahead and satisfy your curiosity. I'm including a link in the show notes to a YouTube video. The channel is called None Such. It's a chappy little guy. It looks like he's from the UK, but he actually makes he improvises these 12 gauge shell adapters onto the end of his bow arrows that he can just slide a 12 gauge round into, and about a quarter or half an inch of the shell is exposed, and basically when it hits anything, the ground or target square enough, it just pushes that round right back into the firing pin that he has built into these little chambers. The difference is that these are actual metal chambers that he's basically cut piping to fit the 12 gauge. He ground it off the rim of the shell so they slide in there nice and easy. And those do look cool. I mean, he has trouble getting them to go off. He's shooting some watermelon and some boxes of soda, and then ultimately his better shots are him just throwing the arrow straight up in the air, and they land straight down on the ground, and they detonate good. Like, they send the shaft like clear in the other direction. So to satisfy your curiosity, I am putting the link in there so you can see that. Also, obviously, you're going to want to use some discretion. I would say don't do this at home, but I'm not going to tell you how to run your life. So just, if you're going to try this, try and be smart about it, and not hurt yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing, like in his video, which I've seen as well. I mean, the fact that you have an arrow that's getting, projected back that bad, and I wouldn't be worried about it like me shooting an animal and it coming back at me because of being in a tree stand and that kind of stuff. You don't have to really worry about that. My issue is that, ideally here you would be delivering a system that was more lethal. That's the theory behind all this. But that since it's a bow and arrow situation, you still have an arrow. I mean, I don't know how many guys that are listening to the podcast know, what the heck a real, nice quality arrow cost, but you start adding that junk towards the cost of bullets, and you start quickly going, I'm not going to be willing to lose a $20 arrow the same time that I'm shooting off this one round, and that's kind of a big negative to all of that.
Yeah, my carbon arrows are like 12 something a piece.
Yeah.
So you're looking at for a dozen, about $140, $150. So
Right.
That's definitely not something I'd do. However, if you wanted to do some kind of, survivalist thing, granted, you need to have a grinder to grind the rims off of the shotgun shells. You need to have some sort of welder or pre-make these heads, these adapters with the firing pins in them. It's a lot of work just to get the Rambo effect. But, some people are, that's what they want to do. And so more power to you, I guess. So the next, we're going to go right into the tech gadget or app segment. I do have a holster review, but since this is the Archery Special week, I'm just going to save that review for next week. So rest assured, guys, if you've been you're a gun guy and you're listening to this and you're just kind of rolling your eyes, shaking your head, wishing that I was talking about gun stuff, next week we'll have some good content for you. So just hang in there. So let's get right into the tech gadget or app segment, and this is a stabilizer for the bow, and that's the typically most bows are threaded just below the grip for some kind of, it almost looks like a suppressor of a firearm, but actually it's almost a solid cylinder that's got some kind of internal vibration dampening system built into it. So as you shoot the bow, if you were to watch it in slow-mo, the vibrations of that bow would blow your mind, how much that bow shakes around and vibrates and fluctuates. Well, the stabilizer part is actually meant for all that vibration forces to kind of get soaked up into, and it's supposed to help your accuracy as far as, taking some of that vibration out so that it's not like in the arrow rest. So, to kind of decrease your arrow from shaking so much before it leaves the bow. So at least that's the pseudoscience I think it's meant to do. But somebody has created an HD camera that fits inside that stabilizer. So most bows are already built to have a stabilizer threaded into them. So this would be a camera that would be compatible with almost every bow on the market by utilizing that stabilizer threaded hole right there. So this is by Fuse. It's called the Playback stabilizer camera. What it is allows you to capture full HD 1080p images. So it's got a high quality lens with a 12 megapixel low light sensor. Basically gives you picture perfect video at whatever you're pointing your bow at, which is typically what you're going to want in the frame anyway if you want to film your hunts. So the nice thing about this is, unlike a GoPro or some of those other sport cameras, it does not have a fisheye lens. It has what came from the Tacticam technology, which is kind of its predecessor. It's got looks like a 60-degree lens or 60-degree field of view instead of a typical 120-degree field of view used on those other fisheye cameras. So you don't have kind of an obscured sense of distance and depth. Which I think would kind of ruin a filmed archery hunt for me, is because I want to see how close that thing is. And if it's fisheye, it's going to seem a lot farther than it actually is. So you've got that benefit. So if you take a shot at an animal at 20 yards, it's going to look like a 20-yard shot when you're doing your playback. And so that's, pretty much the biggest selling point I can see on this thing. It's got a durable machined aluminum housing. It's got a kind of these stealth bands that are like inserts that are kind of take the place of sucking the vibration out, absorbing some of that vibration from the bow. But they're just these stealth bands, almost like replacing the grips on a 1911 to absorb the recoil. I'm not really sure those are going to do all that much. They just look like aesthetic things to me. They do have them different colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, pink, and white. Obviously black too. It's got a one-touch power on record button with a vibration indication. So it can do a full HD at 1080p at 30 frames per second, or if you want to get a faster feet per second, you can do 720 and you'll get 60 frames per second. So if you don't really care about the resolution quality, you can get more feet per second. Yeah, it's shock resistant. They've tested it on a 50 cal apparently, and it passed the test. I don't know what degree of objective metrics that's based on. It is chargeable using USB 2.0 or a 110 to 120 volt AC outlet. And of course, you just plug it right into your Mac or PC computer using that USB port. And then it has a micro SD storage with a 64 gigabyte capacity. And then just one last thing, the color options. It's got basically 4 colors. It's got black, and then they've got 3 different camos. You get the Max 1, the Next G2, or the Realtree Extra. So yeah, what do you think about this, man?
Look, it's a nice idea, and I can guarantee you there will be a ton of people who will wind up buying it. There's been several attempts in the sense of trying to make some form of a stabilizer camera. It's kind of, I think, a space on the bow where people feel like it's wasted. We need the stabilizer because, as you said, the vibration is so significant. But everywhere else on our bow, things are in the way. Like, we don't really like to put more stuff on the riser. It weighs things out. It's, it changes top heavy, bottom heavy, those kinds of things. So we'd love to have the idea of just get this thing on the stabilizer and then you can film as you want to. But the unfortunate thing is, like you said, mainly all of the vibrational force is sent towards the stabilizer, and inside of this stabilizer, we have a camera. So it does not, in no way are you going to pull and take a shot and watch there be 0 vibration. Now, I will admit that the videos that they show are much better than, for instance, like the videos that I have taken where, I've actually tried to film what I was shooting. I think I have a Hero 3 on my GoPro. I love it from the standpoint of beauty. The quality is fantastic, but just like you said, the video that I have, for instance, of taking my bear there in Manitoba, I'm at 24, 25 yards at most. My father is 10 yards off to my left. So he is probably, based on his angle, he's maybe right at 30 yards. And, he is zoomed in, but he's far enough back that you can tell how large that animal is compared to surroundings, etc., those types of things. And when I take my shot, you have a shot of him, filming me actually hitting, my bear, but you also have a shot of my GoPro filming from the front of my bow, and that animal is 50 yards away based on that 60 degree, field of, or that 120 field of view. I mean, it's insane how far he looks like he is. Like, it makes me look like a deadgum, hero, because I shot him so far away, even though he's not that far away. And so having actual distance is awesome. I think that's a perfect thing to have there. I just, am going to guarantee you that you're still going to have vibration, and it's either going to be at the shot. If it's short at 20 yards, I'm going to expect the vibration still to be happening as the arrow is there. The other thing is, you got to hold this thing in place. If you watch a lot of guys shoot archery, the goal is do not hold the riser. You basically support it with your left hand if you're a right-handed shooter, and when you let the arrow go, you do not try to grip it. You almost let the bow fall forward. If you watch any of your IBO and high-end shooters, your Olympic shooters, every one of them are going to do that. They are not going to touch that bow with fingers. Basically, it is resting in the crease between an index and a thumb, and that is it. When they shoot, it's going to rotate all the way forward. Well, that's not going to do you a whole lot of good unless you're looking to, wind up with vertigo trying to watch a video of you shooting something. So that's kind of a big negative to me. I think my other negative is that, me and you talked about whether or not, you could place this on a gun, which they obviously have tried on a 50 cal. I think the only reason that it's shock resistant, it just means it didn't blow up, off of having a 50 cal and it's strapped to it. But like, what else would I, want to put this camera on, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, even if I wanted to put it on a gun, that's fine. That's okay. But I can take my GoPro and I can, pretty much go film anything I want to. Put it on my four-wheeler, put it on my tractor, put it on my son's, skateboard, whatever. And with this thing, the shape of it being tubular with threaded end on the end, other than you strapping it to a barrel of a gun, like, to me, I mean, basically the only thing you're going to do is you're going to strap it to the barrel of a gun or you're going to put it on the front of a bow. And so it does really limit something, that's not $100 piece of equipment. It's, still rather expensive. So, I think I would have some negativity in the sense of whether or not, for me, it's probably not for me. I think I would still use my GoPro. I'm just praying that one day GoPro comes out with, an ability for me to change on my, thing to change the entire lens view. Like they'll have one that you can change it from, actual what the distance is to fisheye. And if you can do that, like they'll sell a bajillion of them and make more money than they've ever made ever. Because people do want that,
Yep. And like I've seen these tubular cameras before for the gun market as well as, recreational, where there's just a headband or some kind of head strap that you wear and it puts it kind of above your ear. That would be much more practical in a tree stand because, first of all, like if that deer is looking at you and you haven't risen your bow up yet, then you're going to spook that deer by getting that bow in the ready position. So having a camera on your head so it's filming what you're looking at is actually, to me, makes much more sense. And then also you're not going to have any of that vibration. You get kind of the cool first-person view of you getting the bow ready and pulling the string back. As long as it maybe make sure it's on your other ear than the side that you draw to, just in case, I don't know, your draw length, if you're going to catch this camera with it and send it downrange. I don't know. I agree that it's an interesting thing, but I would, have a terrible time getting it to stay on the game through the whole shot, like you explained. Because I was taught to let the bow rock forward in my hand. So there's no way I could break myself of that. Like even if I wanted to, it would throw all of my mechanics off. So
yep.
Still, it's interesting. Maybe if for a kid, if they want to film their hunts to get kind of more into it, so they can review the shots later on. That's all good.
Yeah, I think if you're really serious about, like, maybe you hunt by yourself and you want to start getting stuff on film, and your thought process right now is, look, this is easy because it's attached to what I'm shooting and I'm going to be aiming it at what I'm shooting. I would severely lean you initially towards buying a cheap, just a decent camcorder, spend even less money than this probably on a decent, camcorder, get you a muddy tree arm, strap it on, and then just learn how to film. I mean, you would be much better off filming a position where a deer's going to cross and making your shot and learning it that way as a self-filmer than you would, I guess, trying to go with something that I know why they're doing it, but to me, its benefits don't outweigh the quality you would get from an actual mounted camera on your tree, or like you said, a secondary shot. I mean, like most of the time when I mount my GoPro on my riser, I actually have it facing me. I don't have it facing the game so that I can get the event of me shooting, because that's something that I want to see too, to some degree, is like, what was my reaction, because you're going to see that at that point in time. Like, when I shot and I know what I felt, what did I look like? Did I look like an idiot, or, was I really happy? What was it, kind of thing? If you just got money to blow, then yeah, put any camera you want to, put one back at you and a GoPro, put this one forward and have one on the tree. But I wouldn't make this my first I'm going to buy because I want to start filming my hunts. I just feel like, to me, you're going to be let down, because the thing that you want more than anything is impact, and you cannot get that back. Like if you don't turn your camera on, on your tree or on your stabilizer. You don't get that moment back. Like, it's gone. And I would be devastated to have, 150, 160 inch buck walk out in front of me, and I'm filming, but because of vibration or me dropping the bow, I didn't get the shot. It's gone. You don't get that chance over again, and that's not cool.
Yeah. And then, as we stated previously, with having some kind of sight, some external illumination source plugged into your sight housing, as considered an electronic device mounted to your bow, this still might not be legal. I know in Washington State, I mean, there could be the argument that, hey, man, it's electronic, you're putting it on your bow, whether or not it's to assist you with sighting or not, it's still technically could be prohibited. So you might want to look into that. I don't know of any game warden that's really going to bust your balls on it. Go, oh, they're going to ask you because they're interested, hey, what's that on your bow? And you can say, oh, it's just an HD camera so I can film my hunt. They're not going to really write you a ticket, but, it depends on if you've already broken a couple laws and you're on his bad side. You could certainly add this to the list of things you're being charged with. So just beware of that. We ain't got no listener feedback this week. I just want to wrap up. Send questions or comments to podcast@firearmsinsider.tv or cross@firearmsradio.tv. Remember to subscribe and leave us an iTunes review. Tell us how we're doing. Check out all the other shows on the Firearms Radio Network at firearmsradio.tv/iTunes. And be sure to visit the Firearms Insider for reviews and future industry coverage. So thanks again, James, for joining me. I think that you've got a bright future in podcasting ahead of you. That was excellent. Your equipment sounded great, and I really appreciated all your expertise because I, like know kind of a little about a lot, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but you definitely know you're able to vocalize and use more smart sounding terms when it comes to the archery industry than I. So I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's been awesome.
Yep. So everyone have a great week. Shoot safe. If you're interested in archery, head on over to your local shop and tell them that you want to try it out, and they will be more than happy to put a bow in your hands. So everyone else, have a great week, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Have a good one.